Welcome into another episode of KOIN Conversations. I am Travis Knight, KOIN 6 morning anchor here with both KOIN 6 News This Morning and Portland's CW. Very excited for this conversation because I am talking to another broadcast fellow here. So we're going to nerd out a little bit together. We have the voice of the Timbers, Fletcher joining joining us this morning, and really appreciate your time. This is great to have you.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, super fun. So we actually kind of sneakily go a long ways back.
Yeah.
We overlapped in the radio universe, which I guess you never fully left as the voice of the Portland Timbers, which I'm excited to talk about. But we overlapped at 7:50 the game. We were both, you working, myself interning with the Bald Faced Truth and John Canzano there.
Absolutely.
That was, I think I was there in 2009.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been a minute now.
That would have been right at the beginning of my time working there. So,
is that really?
Yeah.
That was the beginning?
Yeah, that was the beginning.
It's so funny when you're a new scared intern, you think everybody's been there for a million years. I thought you had been there for some time. Even to this day, I thought you were there longer than that.
Fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun. Let's start there. Let's kind of jump off with where we, I guess, in a way, both started.
Yeah.
So with the Bald Faced Truth, of course, John Canzano hosting the show, still hosting the show to this day. What I remember as an intern, for people at home, the studio it was essentially 3 rooms and glass panels in between each one. You could see all the way through. I was at the far end. My primary job was answering phones.
Yeah.
That was like job number one. Screening phone calls, making sure that they could get on the air. You were running boards, and you were a part of this show. Describe what you did way back when.
Yeah, I was basically sidekick. So I was Canzano's sidekick, would chime in here and there, provide updates throughout the show, and then, make sure commercials ran properly, bump music, everything like that, in and out of breaks, and so on and so forth. So kind of I guess you would say did a little bit of everything on the show.
Yeah,
if we didn't have you there, I was answering phones.
You answered phones, yeah. Well, and what's fun too are the names that went through that. I at the time I was a senior in high school, working into my college years, and I was just trying to absorb the experience, and we're both local guys too. So, being local and seeing, like the Canzanos of the world who had made a name, right, a brand for themselves in the sports world, and seeing how they operated, but then seeing the behind the scenes of guys like yourself and John Strong, who you both in your own rights have gone on to have great sports broadcasting careers. Of course, John Strong, the voice of American soccer now. And it's just fun to be able to say that we all overlapped and took in those experiences. What stuck out to you when you think about those times working there?
Man, I mean, the things that kind of jump out to me are obviously, so growing up here locally, I was a huge Duck fan. And so having the opportunity to be a part of that world was really cool. Like my first actual paid shift at the radio station was that we used to do 24 hours of Oregon Duck coverage, like before a big game. So my first shift was midnight to 6 a.m., like running the board behind the scenes.
Brutal.
Before the Civil War for the Roses in 2009.
Yeah.
And so I was there doing that. And actually the funny story with that is that I went home after my shift ended at 6 and went to bed because the game was, I want to say it was at like 5 o'clock p.m. It was a ESPN nationally televised game, and I was going to get picked up and taken down from Beaverton, and I completely overslept my alarm. And so I woke up like 10 minutes before I was supposed to meet my ride, and I hadn't showered, and I hadn't eaten, I hadn't done anything, and I just...
You had to go.
Had to go.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, all right, well, I guess this is how I'm rolling today.
So were you there as a fan or as media?
I was there as a fan that day. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was sitting in my parents' seats, section 13, where I grew up, and getting to take all that in, which obviously, if you're a Duck fan, it was a great game. Beaver fan, you kind of want to forget about
not
it.
So much.
But, Jeremiah Masoli running over the defender, and the rest is history, right?
Yeah, that is one of my, I will now share my own connection to that story. I didn't know that we were going to go down this path.
Yeah.
But that's my first Duck game at Autzen Stadium. And so my mom is a teacher to this day. And that was my senior year of high school. I went to high school at Newburgh High School.
Okay.
And I had a buddy and his dad who were like, we have to go down to this game. This was a Friday.
Yeah,
and the reason that
Friday
matters
night.
is because it was a school night. It was a school day, and I was at school. And they are telling me that I have to skip school to go to this game. I was like, well, I have to check in with my mom. The wrath that would be felt would be undeniable. And my mom's a single mom school teacher, So missing school was always a huge deal.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was sick, whether it's anything.
Can't do it.
So yeah, you can't. You just simply cannot do it. And so I told them that there's no chance I'm going to be able to go to this game. I called my mom, landline to landline.
Yeah.
Called my mom, had the number memorized for her work number, and by the grace of the football god, she picked up. And I just pleaded, "Is there any chance I can skip school to go to this game?" And she said yes.
Let's go.
And I know, so then we didn't even have tickets yet.
Yeah.
So we all get in the car, we get down there, we acquire tickets through means necessary.
Yeah.
And get into the game. And like you said, the rest is history. As a Duck fan, awesome. Oregon State fans,
Yeah.
not so much. But that's also one of my favorite stories. 10 years after that, as a sports reporter here, went back and did a story, talked to the voice of the Ducks and Beavs, Jerry Allen,
Yep.
Mike Parker,
Yep.
talked to LaMichael James on the Oregon side, talked to James Rogers on the Oregon State side to relive that game.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite sports stories to put together.
James Rogers was probably like, "Can we talk about 2007?
Yeah.
The overtime
It was
game
like,
when I ran into the end zone.
Yeah,
to
why
beat
are
the
we
Ducks?"
talking about this one? It's like, I'm sorry, but it's the anniversary. Oh man, that's great stuff.
Yeah, it's so funny that you had that experience. I mean, it's core memory, right? Like,
Yeah.
your mom had the realization that like you could be in school and be sad, or make a core memory and go to a game, right?
And it is.
Like,
It's a total core memory. Oh, that's great. Well, and speaking of memories, going back to our time at 750 The Game, what I remember too about the whole experience is as an intern, this trepidation, it wasn't instilled that way.
Yeah.
I just was so afraid to make a mistake and, all those types of things. And then after Canzano's show, I was driving up from Eugene. I was a student at the University of Oregon as this was all taking shape.
Yeah.
And so I would drive up once a week from Eugene to intern and then go back just to get the experience and, make the connections. And this is just before the Timbers went MLS, which
Okay.
is, when you took, obviously
Yeah.
took over as the voice of the Portland Timbers on the radio side. And between yourself and John Strong, you were getting this Portland Timbers radio show off the ground.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, either yourself or Strong would come in right, as I'm getting ready to leave, like, "Can you stick around and answer phones for another hour?" I was like, absolutely. So, would do that. But I saw the work, right? And I think that's a big, I don't know where it stands now. I've been out of radio for quite some time.
Yeah.
I've been in the TV world. But I don't know if people understood at the time. It was new to me how much a single person is doing. That
Yeah.
Timbers show, when you were hosting it, you were the host, you were the producer, and by producing that also meant that you organized the show, not just ran the boards.
Right.
You were a one-man band
Yeah.
doing those types of things. What do you think were some of the big misperceptions of sports talk radio?
I think probably the biggest misconception is that really people think, oh, you're on 3 to 6 or 3 to 7 or 12 to 3. You just roll in at 11:45 and do the show for 3
Peace
hours
out.
and leave, right? No, there's actually a lot more that goes into it. I mean, when I was hosting Afternoon Drive in 2016, I think it was, our show was 3 to 7, but I was getting in at 9 a.m., 10 a.m. every morning. And then there's 4 to 5 hours of prep that go into doing the show, whether it be prepping for interviews, prepping for segments of like, what's the topic to discuss? How do we not just take whatever the headline is and talk about that, but like relate it locally or find some sort of unique twist on this to have it be a little bit more interesting and intriguing for the listener. So,
Right.
And I think especially as time went along and as social media became bigger and bigger, there were less phone calls and more interactions on social media. So
Sure.
that kind of changed it as well, in the sense that like you wouldn't get people calling in on the phone as much, but you'd get a lot of interactions on Twitter or Facebook or what have you, right? And
Yeah.
so that changed the dynamic because you didn't have necessarily as many voices on the show. It became you, and if you had a co-host, that, and then maybe your board op and a producer at most. But I mean, those were kind of the good days, and I feel like now it's really, you got 1 or 2 voices on your show, which, hey, that's the way the industry's gone, and that makes it a little bit challenging, but that's why I'm glad I've kind of edged into the play-by-play world a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a perfect jumping off point. Let's go into that. So again, voice of the Portland Timbers. When did you take the helm, of that microphone?
Yeah. So, I mean, in 2011, when they joined MLS, John Strong was doing broadcast at that point, had been doing broadcast for numerous years. And really, he deserves all the credit with Talk Timbers back in the day and everything else. But he kind of brought me on board with the Timbers in that initial season. And actually, I was his engineer in studio the year before, their last year in USL. And so I would work the games from the studio. And then in 2011, when they joined MLS, I got to be on site and was basically pregame, postgame host, and did that for 12 seasons, kind of cutting my teeth because I wasn't a huge soccer kid growing up. I didn't know a whole ton about soccer. It wasn't a sport I played. I basically became a soccer fan because I had a kid who was from Ecuador in my fraternity down at the University of Oregon.
Seriously?
In the 06 World Cup, Ecuador made the knockout rounds for, I want to say it was like the first time in 20, 30, 40 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And I just vividly remember him running through the hallways in our fraternity house with his Ecuadorian flag, screaming the Ecuadorian national anthem at like 6 a.m. before the game kicked off. And I was like, this is crazy passion. Like, I got to find out more of what this is about. And so I gained a true appreciation of the game because I could throw a football 40 yards or 50 yards and hit someone running down the field or whatever. I can't kick a ball and do that, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, watching the skill level required to be able to play that game, it really kind of intrigued me and impressed me. And then I started playing FIFA on PlayStation or Xbox or whatever it was, and then kind of took off from there. So
that is not the story I expected. I'm not gonna lie. I thought you were a soccer guy through and through, and that's probably because I saw you working so hard on the Talk Timbers show.
I had to work hard. I didn't know what I was doing.
You couldn't fake it. You couldn't fake it. That's great. I mean, so what's interesting about that too is I am new to soccer. I also didn't grow up with the game. I'm a baseball guy by trade.
Yeah. Okay.
And over the last few years, I have really doubled down into the Timbers to understand the game. And this sounds so obvious because you can say this about most sports, but once you understand the game, you see the beauty of the game, right? Yeah. I get when people say baseball is slow. You're not seeing the chess match that's being played.
For sure.
I knew that was the case with soccer. When was that like aha moment to you where you're like, you know what? I really want to make soccer my focus, my career.
I think one of the things for me, like the time that I started to recognize that, it had to do with the fact that while working at the radio station, had the opportunity to be the pregame, postgame host for the Ducks on 750 The Game. So would go on a few hours before the game, few hours after the game, host stuff with Anthony Newman, who obviously played for the Ducks. But it was really difficult to do that because I was such a fan. And so I was there during great years, but I found that what a lot of people wanted to talk about during those great years was all the things they weren't doing well enough. And it was like hard to kind of go through that and experience that, right? And I was like, this isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's becoming a job, right? And I think the thing that I love about soccer and what made me really realize that is because I'm not a hardcore, passionate aficionado fan, I'm able to get into it and be passionate about it while the game's going on because I love competition, because I love sport. But at the end of the day, it doesn't determine like my mood or like how my day was, right? Like I'm able to kind of, for lack of a better term, compartmentalize like, hey, this is what's going on right now. And hey, the Timbers won. Hey, the Timbers lost. Like great or terrible, depending. But in the end, I'm still going home. I think family obviously has provided some levity to that as well, having young kids. And it's like putting things in perspective a little bit. Right?
I think that makes perfect sense. I to relate it to my own experience, I'm full-blown news guy now, but, half of my career I was in the sports realm, and covering Oregon and Oregon State. And, I did that both as a reporter in Eugene. I did that up here at KOIN in Portland. And, I got out of sports for a few reasons, and I still love covering sports, but I got out of it for one of the many reasons that you just laid out, which is I missed it being fun. Yeah. And some people, they can do that. That's great. And I can still go have fun covering a game. But, let's take an Oregon game. I didn't want to think about that deadline every single time, right? And so I went to my first Oregon game as a fan since college just last year.
Oh, really?
It was so fun.
Yeah.
And it was great. And that's not me yucking a yum. If you want to cover the game, that's awesome.
Totally.
I still had a great time doing it, but there is something to be able to just enjoy it. a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think one of the interesting aspects of working in the sports industry is that, and this, it varies from organization to organization, but I've had some experiences, not with anybody that I currently work with. The Timbers are great with this, but there's some other organizations where if you are covering them or if you're working for them, there can be a feel of like, hey, you're lucky to be here.
Right.
1,000 people would want your job.
Yeah.
So because of that, we can maybe, push you a little bit harder
Absolutely.
or make you do certain things
Yeah.
because someone else will come in and do your job,
And
right?
they're not necessarily wrong.
Correct. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
They're not wrong, but how do you find that balance of like, hey, we appreciate the coverage. It's important that you're here. With also like the recognition of like, hey, yeah, it is your job. You got to get stuff done. Like,
Yeah.
it's just kind of an interesting, that's been my experience of like working in the industry.
Yeah, I think that dichotomy is one that others can relate to
Yeah.
as well. Okay, I want to dive further into your role with the Timbers, and then I want to talk about your role with Make-A-Wish at some point here as well. So we are gonna get to that, but diving more headfirst into your time as the voice of the Portland Timbers. We've laid out that you didn't grow up as a diehard soccer fan, but this is your hometown team.
Yeah.
How cool is this to be able to do this in your neck of the woods that you grew up in?
I mean, it's so awesome. I mean, to have the ability to be a voice for a team locally that, I know people are tuning in and listening, and you're creating, again, core memories for a younger generation. I think that's how soccer is going to grow in this country. It's continuing to grow, but MLS is 25, 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Think about where the NBA was at 25 years old. I mean, there was still the NBA and the ABA, right?
True. That's very true.
NFL, Major League Baseball when it was 25 years old. So to me, I believe the passion comes from generations of fans that have experiences, both positive and like maybe tragic. Maybe your team loses a big game or something like that. And so you develop this passion and desire for the team, right? And to see the team be successful. And I think in Portland, it's really cool because there is such a tight-knit group that supports the club, and they're really passionate about it. It definitely is more reminiscent of like English soccer where the town, Portland obviously doesn't shut down for games, but like it's very clear that there's a game going on when the Timbers are playing or when the Thorns are playing for that matter, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's something that's really unique and cool about Portland as compared to some other cities where, it's just another team playing another game.
Yeah, I mean, you can see on TV when fans don't show.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it clear as day. Whenever I'm watching MLS games and typically, of course, I am watching Timbers more often than I'm watching just the MLS at large.
Yeah.
But between fan bases, I know Atlanta always seems to draw super, super well.
Yeah.
There are a couple of fan bases that absolutely do draw well, but the energy, and that's what I feel like really stands out about. Of course, Seattle. You have to give Seattle their props too. You have to give the Sounders fan base their props, and I love when you have the energy that just carries into the game, that really, whether it's through radio or TV, whatever medium, where you can feel the crowd affecting maybe the emotions of a match. And with that said, how important are the Timbers to the MLS? Because you look at the rivalries, the Cascadia Cup, right? What they have, this relationship that the Timbers are a part of with the Sounders in Vancouver.
Yeah.
How important are those types of rivalries and atmospheres when a league like MLS is still, relatively speaking, in its infancy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. Obviously, it's changed a little bit with like LAFC coming into the league. With you have the El Tráfico and LAFC and LA Galaxy, but you can't match the history that exists between specifically Portland and Seattle, but obviously Portland and Vancouver as well. I think that those types of rivalries are important to the league simply because it is must-watch television, because you can go back and look at these different characters from games of the past and how things went, and whether they're league games or non-league games. I mean, everyone here in Portland remembers the red card wedding, Clint Dempsey, picking up a red card and then pulling out the referee's book and tearing it in half in a U.S. Open Cup game. And, so you have these kind of moments that you can hearken back upon in the history of these rivalries. And, I think the other thing, I'm going to go back on your Portland-Seattle point.
Yeah.
Seattle, quantity, Portland, quality.
Love that.
Seattle may have more people that show up to the games from time to time, but Portland's fans are much more rabid and passionate, I would say, than Seattle's fans.
How unique is the environment to not just take the fan base out of it for a second, but just the physical space that the Timbers play in? And this is coming from somebody who, that's the only Major League Soccer venue I have ever seen in person is Providence Park. How unique is that compared to other stadiums? I mean, does it help forge some of that quality of the energy?
I think so. Absolutely. And I guess what I would hearken back to is a memory that I have. And I've been to both Oregon National Championship games. I've been to MLS Cups in Columbus and Atlanta, as well as the one in Portland. But the one in Portland, when Felipe Morris scored in second half stoppage time, that is the most wild I have ever seen any stadium and the most loud I have ever heard any stadium. And that's 25,000 people. I was at MLS Cup in 2018 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium where there were 75, 80,000 people.
Yeah.
I've been at the Rose Bowl with 95 or 100,000 people. And that atmosphere and environment when Morris scored that goal in second half stoppage time, I will forever remember. And, to this day has been the loudest I've ever heard a group of people get over a sporting event.
That's awesome. I think that answers the question that I was going to ask, which is biggest highlight of calling for your hometown team. And I think I'll check that one off.
I didn't get to call that one. I was pregame, postgame host for that. I would say the pregame, postgame coverage and coverage around when they won MLS Cup was pretty cool. The Duck national title games were pretty cool, just being there and being on the radio for those.
Yeah.
But they were kind of unique. I mean, one of the coolest settings was hosting our pregame show right outside the Rose Bowl before the Oregon-Florida State first ever playoff game.
What a moment.
That was really cool to experience that. But yeah, in terms of the Timbers, they've had an interesting couple of years, these last couple of years where they made the playoffs, but haven't been quite to the level that they were 2015, 2018, 2021, right? And I think that they're primed to potentially do something similar as we progress into the latter stages of this season with some of the acquisitions. But there's been some fun moments, but being in the building and being on the pregame, postgame coverage for that 2015 MLS Cup was pretty cool. I mean, the last thing I'll mention kind of on the rivalry side as well that I wanted to mention earlier was Portland and Seattle is important, and nothing describes it more than the fact that the representative in MLS Cup from the Western Conference from 2015 to I want to say it's 2018 or 2019 was Portland or Seattle every single year.
Yeah.
So that tells you everything you need to know about how dominant Portland and Seattle were and the Pacific Northwest was in that stretch. And they haven't quite gotten back there yet, but they both won MLS Cups, and people know you don't want to face Portland and Seattle in the playoffs.
No. I mean, it's all about gutting the fish.
Right?
You walk down 23rd when the Sounders are in town, and it's a sight to behold.
Oh,
it's a sight to behold. Okay, well, I'm going to put a pin in this conversation for the moment. I love talking about the Timbers, but I also want to talk about what you're doing now with Make-A-Wish. So we're going to do that on the other side of this break. Welcome back to this KOIN Conversation. I'm Travis Tyke alongside Fletcher Johnson, the voice of the Portland Timbers. But that is not your only title. You are also the Director of Corporate Alliances with the Make-A-Wish Foundation here, our local chapter, I should say. And this is great. I want to talk about your endeavor into Make-A-Wish, but I also think there's a really interesting crossover that we were just talking about during this quick break, which is your worlds have collided with the Timbers and Make-A-Wish with a really neat story some years ago. Tell me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2013, we had a Wish kid, 8-year-old named Atticus, who in the process of kind of determining what his wish was, decided that he wanted his wish to be for his 8U soccer team, the Green Machine, to face off against the Portland Timbers.
How cool is that?
And so obviously the Timbers are relatively new in Major League Soccer. I'm not working for Make-A-Wish at this point, but I am working for the Timbers. And so, this all comes together. It's the most famous wish we've ever granted simply because it got picked up. It was a part of SportsCenter's top 10 plays that day. And it was on I believe it was a Tuesday afternoon. It was a noon kick. Basically, there were about 2,000 to 3,000 Timbers Army members that showed up at lunch on a Tuesday.
Wow. Although that gives me chills.
Right. And it's the only time in the history of Providence Park, Geldwin Field, Civic Stadium that the Timbers have ever been the away team and that the Timbers Army have rooted against them. So they were rooting for the Green Machine that day in Atticus. And I want to say Atticus scored the game-winning goal. It was like 12-11 or something like that. The Green Machine won. And it was just such a cool community wish. Like those are some of the coolest wishes where we give the opportunity for a lot of people to come together and celebrate this kiddo. And Atticus was going through cancer treatment. And so it was a really cool experience. Like I said, was on SportsCenter. And then we stayed in touch with Atticus. And actually in 2023, we did a 10-year wish-iversary with the Portland Timbers.
How neat.
That was fun to kind of coordinate, which then led to Atticus being on the field. They brought back a bunch of the players that participated in the game. And Atticus also got to help Timber Joey be a part of helping another young girl find out that her wish was coming true, and her wish was to meet mermaids in Hawaii.
Oh my god!
So she found out at halftime of the game on the field that her wish was coming true.
What a cool moment!
Cool.
That's so great. Well, so tell me about how you got involved with Make-A-Wish, because I mean, many people are. They're acquainted with what Make-A-Wish is all about.
Yeah.
Maybe dive into that too and remind people what Make-A-Wish does. And I want to know about your journey into working with Make-A-Wish and why you got involved.
Yeah, so our mission at Make-A-Wish is to create life-changing wishes for children with critical illnesses. Now, obviously, for us, local children, Oregon and Southwest Washington is the territory that we represent. And kids can be referred between the ages of 2.5 and 18 years old. And we have 4 main wish types. I wish to go, I wish to have, I wish to be, and I wish to meet. We do kind of have a 5th, which some kids choose, which is I wish to give. So we've had kids give toys to the children's hospitals, or give like a special room to the nurses, or something like that. So it's been cool to kind of see those come together. But my involvement with Make-A-Wish started because I had a friend who went to Clackamas High School. He graduated from Clackamas High School in 2004. His name is Jeremy Ebner. We were fraternity brothers, and then roomed together throughout college. And then after college, he came down with leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia, and was living in Australia at the time. Came back up to Portland to get treatment at the Knight Cancer Institute up at OHSU. And he started noticing that a lot of the people around him were a lot younger than he was that were getting this treatment. And so he started to think about what he wanted to do to give back. And so he decided that when he went into remission, he wanted to start a golf tournament dinner and auction, because he was an avid golfer, to benefit kids. And he kind of selected Make-A-Wish as that organization that he wanted to benefit, right? So after about a 1.5-year battle, he was diagnosed, I want to say in 2012, maybe early 2012, and then he passed away in June of 2013. And he had told myself and 3 of our close friends that this was kind of his vision after he went into remission. And so we jumped on a phone call the next day and said, all right, let's make this happen in honor of our buddy.
Wow.
And so he passed away in June of 2013. We put on our first event in October of 2013. We called it Jebner's Wish, because he was known in college as Jebner, Jeremy Ebner. And we raised $15,000 in that first year. We had like 80 people come. It was up at Oregon Golf Club. We didn't really know what we were doing, but I was in radio. We had someone who worked at Oregon Golf Club, someone at Nike, and then someone who worked in the wine industry. And so we were able to get a lot of stuff kind of donated or procured without having to spend a bunch of money, right? So from that point forward, we were like, oh, we can do this. Like, this wasn't incredibly hard, right? And so we would go on to put on 11 events annually, or 11 events over the course of 10 years, basically, raising over $350,000 for Make-A-Wish Oregon, and granting, I want to say, like over 45 or 50 wishes for local kids.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. And so one of the most rewarding things is we would always, at the event, hand off the book of the wishes that we granted to Jeremy's mom at the event, because Jeremy's family always attended the event, which was incredibly special.
So meaningful.
So about halfway through, I was our contact for Make-A-Wish. So I would work with Make-A-Wish to get what we needed for the event or what have you, get a wish family to come out and attend the event to speak to what a wish means. And they reached out to me and were like, hey, we've got a job. Seems like you know how to fundraise, and seems like you're passionate about our mission. You want to come work for us? And I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
I'd been laid off from the radio station like 18 months prior, and was kind of in a job that was a good learning experience, but wasn't something that I was super passionate about.
Yeah.
And so kind of jumped in both feet and started in December of 2018, and kind of the rest is history from there. Kind of found my path and continued to do Jebner's Wish while I worked at Make-A-Wish. And now we've folded in the golf tournament into kind of the Make-A-Wish umbrella, so to speak. So it's an internal event now, and was actually on the air with you a couple months ago talking about it, right?
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how everything came to be, and I feel like I couldn't be in a better place. I get to keep my foot in the sports world a little bit and do something else that I'm super passionate about that has a really positive impact on the community.
I mean, what a background. What a story.
Right?
It's incredible. It's incredible. And to be able to use this, and you do have a platform with the Timbers, hopefully it does give it a little bit of extra publicity to get people to actually just maybe even take that extra second to say, like, hey, maybe I can get involved.
Yeah.
Right? What would you say to somebody who maybe just hasn't taken that step to get involved when it's something that they've thought about maybe before?
Yeah, I mean, I when I'm talking to people about how if they have an interest in being involved in the community or benefiting the community in some way, I go, what is it that you're passionate about? Is it kids? Is it homelessness? Is it food insecurity? Like, what is it that you feel passionate about? And find that, and then find a way to plug in to the community in a way that's going to benefit the community and also fill your bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's got to fill your bucket in some way. That's not selfish to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it has to be something that you're passionate about. Otherwise, it's going to feel like a job.
And
right?
you're not going to stick with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say is figuring out what it is you're passionate about and how you want to benefit the community, and then use your connections or just reach out. I mean, we get inquiries all the time about people who either want to volunteer or host an event or benefit our organization in some way. And I'm all ears, right? Like, let's figure it out. Let's talk about it. And if it's something that can work, great. And if we discover, I mean, we've had people who've gotten involved and had frank conversations. Like, it's very clear that, like, you're passionate about this instead. Like, I can connect you to someone here. Like, your services or your time would be so valuable over with this organization. So it's in the nonprofit space, it's more about like helping people find their fit as opposed to like, we got to try and get everybody we possibly can into our mission because ours is the only one that matters. Like, there's so many great causes out there. Let's get people involved in the right ways so that everyone can benefit.
That makes a lot of sense. Can people reach out to you or to Make-A-Wish? Where's the best place to go if they want to ask some questions there?
Yeah. Oregon.wish.org is a great place. You can find my information on there, email, phone number, all that kind of stuff. Always happy to answer any questions or get people connected in whatever way is best, because I would have never guessed, 10 years ago that I would have ever been working for Make-A-Wish or during college, right? And for the simple fact that I had a friend who went through a tragic circumstance, and I think about how he passed away in 2013. I got hired by Make-A-Wish in 2018, 5 years after he passed away, still having an impact on my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every day that I work at Make-A-Wish, he's still having an impact on my life. And I think that that's personally really cool, but I think that there are a lot of stories like that. And there are a lot of people who have the opportunity to give back in a way that they see fit and is a way that can really benefit the community, and that's what matters most.
Yeah, it is. I think it's really well said. Fletcher, it's been awesome to talk to you, and thank you so much for your time to talk about the old radio days to what you're doing now with the Timbers, and to talk about the impact you're making with Make-A-Wish. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
it's been great
let's
to talk
get you
to
out to some more Timbers matches.
All right, we can make that happen. Yeah, go Timbers.